Are you a coach or a healer who's over 50 and afraid to be seen on social media? And you secretly want to be a repeat guest on talk shows or podcasts, or even take center stage in front of an audience of thousands? And yet, in the real world, you pretty much hang out in the shadows. Because frankly, the thought of actually doing those things, it's terrifying. In this video, let's talk about why being visible makes you feel so vulnerable and how you can shift that discomfort into something that feels powerful instead. I understand how hard it can be living with these internal contradictions. I want to be seen, but don't look at me. I want to be heard, but don't put me on the spot. I want to work with clients, but they don't know I exist. If the thought of putting yourself out there on social media when you don't have a following, with the hope of attracting marketing, if it feels like a Herculean labor, I want you to know it isn't impossible, and you are well suited for this task. But let's start with the basics. Not everyone is comfortable being seen. And so if you don't feel comfortable with the idea of creating content for social media, you certainly are not alone. But just like Hercules used courage and resilience to complete his labors, you can too. After all, you have the courage to dream what probably feels like an impossible dream. And you have the resilience to keep going because you felt frustrated, you felt discouraged, and you've felt disappointed in yourself. But why is it that feeling visible feels so uncomfortable for so many of us? Let's face it, it's not just a fear of being seen, it's a deep-rooted emotional response. If you've spent years being the quiet one, the supporter, or someone who blends into the background, stepping into the spotlight feels unnatural. It feels out of character, like it's you, but it's not you, and it can't be you. And maybe like me, you've felt that humiliating pressure when your mind shuts down and it won't tell your mouth what you want to say, and then all eyes are on you. Or that the indignity when someone hijacks a conversation just because you pause to gather your thoughts. Our nervous systems perceive visibility as a risk. It's a threat. And it's not just socially, it's also emotionally. Making ourselves visible triggers those old fears of judgment, rejection, and of not belonging. Have you ever felt judged, dismissed, or overlooked so many times that putting yourself out there, it feels like you're just asking for another dose of rejection? Our survival instincts, they seek safety in belonging, and most of the time we don't feel like we belong. But when we're quiet, when we're invisible, when no one feels threatened by us, we don't feel like they're going to try to boot us out of the group. But now, to become the person who can achieve your dream, you need to break that pattern, and your nervous system, it has no idea how to handle it. We've been taught that you get noticed when you smile more, when you talk more, when you socialize more. It's always about being more, as if we're lacking something, some vital piece of something that will make people see us and hear us and recognize us. But what if there's a way to get noticed by the people who are waiting to work with you that focuses on your natural strengths? That focuses on your natural strengths in a way that feels safe, it feels comfortable, and even freeing. Looking back, I had a Dickens-like experience. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. But for me, it was the opposite. It was the worst of times, and it became the best of times. And oh, the great expectations that came from it. Basically, here's what happened. Back in 1997, going way back, someone thrust me into the spotlight, and I did not die. It was Christmas time. My mother-in-law asked me to read a poem for Grandmama in front of the family. Of course, I refused, but then I caved. People pleaser. Here's the thing I never understood. There were so many people better suited to read that poem. The oldest grandson, the great-granddaughter, heck, even my stepmother-in-law's daughter would have had no problem reading that dang poem. But for some reason, she asked me. And that request, and my courage to fulfill that request, changed the course of my life. 3 months later, I joined Toastmasters, and I discovered something so totally out of this world crazy. I like public speaking. I know. And here's the thing, you can't even imagine how quiet and socially awkward I was back then. But here's the magical thing. After giving just a few speeches, I started speaking up more at work. I started being asked about my ideas for making changes at work, and eventually I moved into a management position. But the best thing that came from that terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, suddenly my secretest of dreams, one I'd had since I was a child, seemed like a possibility. And that dream, it was to stand on a stage and tell stories. So here's the shift I invite you to make. Trust that it's okay and it's safe to be visible. Sometimes, when you want to be. You see, being visible isn't actually the problem. Fear of always having to be on is. Creating content that talks about how your services can help people, it can be just like having a one-on-one conversation with someone. You control how you show up, at your own pace, in a way that feels right for you. Showing up online doesn't mean you have to share everything. You get to decide what to share with whom when you're ready to share it. And you certainly don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be noticed. You don't have to force it. Your clients are out there waiting to discover you. Now let me give you 4 quick tips on how to feel safe being more visible. And it can actually feel pretty magical. Number 1 is start small. This isn't an all or nothing situation. It's a gradual process. Allow yourself the time you need to feel capable, to feel comfortable, and to feel confident stepping into the spotlight. Redefine for yourself what your social media presence needs to look like. It's not just about high energy videos or oversharing or live streaming. There are ways to show up that exactly reflect who you are so that your audience can find you. Number 3, recognize that being seen doesn't mean you're being judged. Most people aren't judging at all. They're just scrolling their lives away. But your post or your video, it might be exactly what someone needs to change their life. And number 4, remember that your message matters. And right now, someone is looking for exactly what you offer. But they can't find you if you don't show up. I'm not sharing this to put pressure on you or to guilt trip you. There are coaches and healers out there who are also here to serve the same people that you are. So your people, your future clients, they're taken care of. But yet I also know that you have this deep calling, I've kept it a secret for so long, do I actually want to put it into the light, calling to help other people. And you're ready to step out of the shadows and into the spotlight because you know that's why you're here. Can you see now how being visible can feel safe? The next step is to learn how to use your newfound visibility in a way that attracts clients effortlessly. In the next video, I'll share the exact method that makes marketing feel easy, even for us introverts. And it's going to pop up right there. And if it's not there yet, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. In the meantime, earlier I mentioned the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day that I had, and it changed my life. And you can watch that full story here.